see you guys in the dark.
So this all happened throughout my high school experience. I'm currently a junior at my school, and this all started the second semester of my freshman year. The first incidents were close to the end of the freshman year. There were a few my sophomore year, and then there's only been one so far my junior year. And it's all completely true. I tried looking for the police records that go with it, but I couldn't find anything, because of how long it was. The guy in question, I'll call him Alex, is Asian, with really short hair, and something like 5'4". He's in the same grade as my oldest sister. He's also an avid user of cigarettes, alcohol, and the likes. He even bragged to me that he got his license taken away because he went 60 miles an hour above the speed limit on a highway. A damn highway with the limit of 65 miles per hour. That meant he went at 125. So basically, an ill-behaved boy was chasing a really good girl. I'll give you the entire story now, and I hope it makes everyone who reads this a little more careful when making new friends. The second semester of my freshman year, I took an art class in hopes to get an elective credit. I was sitting with some friends talking about the projects we were making, and Alex walks through. I'd never noticed him in class before, which was really strange. I should also put this on a timeline for you, to make this a little easier to follow. It was close to prom season, so early March, and luckily close to the end of the year. He started talking about whatever, and we really hit it off. After a week, I started seeing him popping up around me, in the hallways, outside my classes, and he'd talk to me during passing time. I didn't think much of it, being the stupid, naive child I was. I should also mention that he rode my bus in the afternoon. Alex and I would sit by each other on the bus and talk, which just encouraged further interaction with him. One day, my older sister, who is 2 grades above me, didn't have theater practice after school, so she took the bus home. And when she got on, she saw me next to Alex. Her face had turned white, and she sat down near the front of the bus. I thought it was really strange, so I planned on asking her about it when I got off the bus, but I forgot to. As prom got even closer, Alex kept talking about it with me. My friends and I all assumed he was going to ask me, because not only did he follow me around, but he wouldn't shut up about it, and he was clearly showing signs of interest in me. Unfortunately for him, however, I was in a relationship with someone at the time, and it was a girl. I had absolutely no interest in dating him. If he did ask me, though, I would need to say we'd need to go as friends. Thankfully, Alex told me instead that he'd like me to tell Tanya that if she didn't have a date, that he'd love to bring her. Almost immediately remembering the incident on the bus, I just said, "She's got a date already, but thanks," wanting to protect her. Over the next few days, Alex actually started talking about sexual statics. Things like average length of someone's manhood, or the average age someone loses their virginity. I got super uncomfortable about this, and told some of the boys in my class that if it got brought up again, I'd go sit with them, and they gladly offered to protect me. This was my first set of red flags. Another instance that set off red flags about Alex was when I got home, and the doorbell rang. I looked out the window and saw Alex there. This wasn't the strangest part, because I got off the bus before Alex did, so he saw where I had lived. I yelled to my mom that someone was here to see me, and I went out on the front porch to go talk to him. He was with his friends, and yelled to them that he was going to catch up with them later, and he wanted to talk to me first. He told me about some mundane stuff, and I was getting bored. So bored, in fact, that I just bluntly decided to ask him if he liked me. I was tired of him always beating around the bush, and I just wanted a stupid answer. Alex kind of froze and danced around the subject, confirming my suspicions. The way he avoided telling me that he liked me was really strange, bragging to me about his drugs and illegal escapades. My dad was also just coming home from work at the time too, so I had an excuse to leave the really uncomfortable situation. When my dad came in the house, he told me about how nice Alex seemed, and I looked over to Tanya, and she looked upset about it, but neither of us said anything. Later on, not on the same day though, I posted a picture on my Instagram, and he commented on it. I still don't know how he got my Instagram to this day. He commented his phone number, telling me to text him, and that my dad was really chill. And along with the demand for me to text him, he continued to almost harass me on the direction of messaging on Instagram, asking to hang out. This was another red flag that set things off for me, making me weary of him, and I decided that I needed to be very careful with him from now on. In early May, he continued to follow me from class to class, but from a further distance. This was absolutely mortifying, but my girlfriend at the time thought it was hilarious. She said that it was funny seeing a strange boy chase a gay that had no chance with him. I laughed with her on the outside, but internally, I was really scared. It was at this time frame that he actually showed up in my window. I should mention that my parents weren't home at this time either. They were out grocery shopping while all my sisters were home alone with me. I was done with all my homework, and I was practicing my makeup skills so I can do the makeup of a few girls that were going to prom. I had my earbuds in and I was listening to my music, when I heard some sort of tapping noise. I took them out, listened intently for a moment, then popped them back in. I heard the tapping noise once again, and took my earbuds out again, once again listening. This happened a few times until I just kept my earbuds out permanently. I finally heard it again, and found it coming from my window. I quickly wiped off my makeup and grabbed a pocket knife that I kept under my pillow. I opened my curtains and saw Alex just standing there. He was strangely dressed in a three-piece tuxedo with a single white rose. He said something and I couldn't hear him through the glass. I yelled through the glass I was going to come outside and talk to him. As I walked up the stairs to go outside, Tanya came up to me, terrified. She told me not to go outside, and I asked why. She told me that Alex was outside, and that he was dangerous. She revealed to me that he stalked her freshman year, and followed her around the way he did me. We both panicked together, and I heard the garage door open, signaling that our parents were home. We ran to the foyer, telling our dad that Alex was outside, and that he needed to do something about it. He walked over to the side of the house where my window was, and talked to him. I never knew what he said, but it kept Alex away for a while, which was really nice. But things suddenly got a lot worse from there. Alex started talking to me again, but this time it was about sex and drugs, even worse than before, telling me about all the drugs he had with him, and about all the girls he screwed, going into extreme detail. I went to go sit with the other boys in the art class, but it did nothing. He still talked about it, even making one of the hockey players uncomfortable. They did their best to shield me, but it only went so far. This was my final red flag. Before I deleted his number and blocked him on Instagram, I was too uncomfortable to put myself through any more social interactions with him. The worst it had gotten, though, was 2 days before the last day of school. I was getting ready for bed, around 10 p.m. when I heard a knock at my window. I once again grabbed my knife and looked out my window, assuming the worst, but praying for it to be just the bushes outside my window. I saw the very dark outline of a figure, and my heart had dropped. I knew it was Alex, so I closed my curtain and ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom, almost in tears about Alex being at my window. My dad and I both went back down to my window, and no one was there. My dad thought Alex could still be there, just hiding in the bushes outside my window. My dad decided to try to scare him off, and went to turn on the back porch lights and call for my dogs. I didn't get any more knocks at my window for maybe 2 minutes. I heard another knock and told my dad. He just marched straight outside at this point and found him sitting by my window with his hood up. I don't know what happened, but the police were called, and they had to escort him back to his house. It was terrifying, but I was pissed at that point. Why wouldn't he just leave me alone? It doesn't stop there, however. The next day during math class, I sat in a spot that faces the window. With my back to the door, halfway through the hour, one girl in the class shouts out my name, telling me to look behind me. I turn around, as does the rest of the class, and there was Alex, standing intently above me, silent. I got up, ready to punch him in the face, but he ran out the door. I just stood in the doorway of the room and broke into tears. 3 other people comforted me, and my girlfriend told the teacher what was going on. The scariest part, however, was that I never told him my schedule. Later that day, my mom, Tanya, and I went to the police at our school. When the officer said we could do a no-contact agreement, we ruled it out because it would take too long to put into place. With only a few days left in school, later when the officer talked to Alex, asking him what he did, he said it was because neither me nor my sister told him no. It was near the end of the year, and nothing happened with him over the summer. My sophomore year, though, I had another class with him. I immediately told the teacher about everything so that she knew, and everyone in class protected me from him. I had no further incidents from him. The teacher actually cared about me, and is now one of my close friends. My sophomore year was clear of any incidences, and I had pretty much forgotten the existence until recently. I woke up and checked my phone after turning off the alarm. I saw that I had gotten a random Facebook message from someone I didn't know. My Facebook is about as private as it gets, so I didn't know that it was possible to receive messages from people that I wasn't friends with on Facebook. My sophomore year, Alex was supposed to graduate, but he didn't. His name wasn't even said at the ceremony, and wasn't even listed in the program. Tanya and I both laughed about it, but we knew that it meant that he was going to be in our city longer. I looked at it anyways, and it was very sexual messages. It read, "I need to cream you and stretch it out real good, make you squirt and cream all over it." It was annoying, and I get messages like that all the time from bots on Instagram, so I would have ignored it, but because it was on Facebook Messenger, it was really strange. I clicked on the person's name, and their profile came up. I scrolled through their pictures, and I saw a picture that made my heart sink. A picture of Alex. It was Alex's profile, and he had messaged me, and changed the profile's name and location. I only showed it to a few people, but not to my parents yet. I showed it to my current boyfriend, who showed it to his mom, and she told me to tell my parents. The reason we showed it to a teacher was because he'd been around the school grounds within the last few weeks, and she may be able to do something about it. Nothing has happened with Alex since, but if something else happens, there is a chance he won't make it out of the situation alive. Because I'm fed up with him, and he's caused me and my family enough grief. Please be careful who you choose to make friends with, and what sort of information you give out. Don't put yourself through what I've been through. Let's not meet again, you creepy fucker. I live in a safe country. Crime rates and cases of violence are quite low compared to other countries. So I grew up having this false sense of security, but my view of the place I live in all changed when I was 16. I was on my weekly visit to the indoor swimming pool. I really enjoyed swimming, and it was a change to my otherwise very routine-like life. Well after my experience that day, I wouldn't visit the swimming pools ever again. At least for now. You see, I was just minding my own business, swimming around the largest pool in the building, when I noticed a man staring at me just a couple meters away. He was older than me, about in his mid-20s. He looked like he was, or had an immigrant background. He didn't do anything wrong. He only looked at me when I swam around, so my alarm bells weren't going off yet. But being a 16-year-old girl, I felt a bit awkward. So I just decided to ignore him, and eventually moved to a pool that had diving boards. It was fine for a minute or two, until the man who was staring at me before also arrived at that pool. It would have been fine, but he didn't even jump from the boards, and just swam in a small circle around staring at me. Now I was feeling really creeped out. It was already creepy enough, but something about his constant stare really made me want to run. I left that pool, and once again I was at the larger one. So lo and behold, just after a few seconds, the man also stepped in. Even though my alarm bells were chiming, I decided to just ignore him. And even if he tried something, I was sure that the lifeguards or someone would come to my rescue. Time went on, and I changed between pools time and time. Every time I moved, the man had followed me. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and decided to just leave. Before leaving the building, though, I spent a longer time than usual at the sauna and in the showers. I hoped that by the time I left, the man would have already left as well. That wasn't the case, though. When I walked out of the ladies' locker room, he was there, talking to a female desk clerk inquiring about bus schedules in broken English. He hadn't seen me yet, so as fast as I could, trying to be silent as possible, I headed to the front door. Damn, my high heels though. So because my shoes made so much noise, he turned to look at me, and the face he made after seeing me, oh man, it still makes me shiver even after all these years. On his face dawned the creepiest smile I had ever seen. I looked at him for a split second and walked through the door, taking my phone out of my pocket. It was already dark outside at the time, and I could hear his footsteps growing closer and closer every second. I meant to go to my mother's workplace after swimming, so that she and I could go home together. Though now that this creep was following me, I wasn't going to do that. It was because of the walkways that I had to take to get to the part of town where it was too isolated. While I was thinking about my options, I was also writing to a group chat. I told my friends everything that was going on at that moment, so if the man tries to do anything, they would know where I am. The guy with the creepy stare was getting closer and walking even faster. Honestly, he was right behind me now. I don't think my heart has ever beaten that fast. Then, he walked straight past me. Had I overreacted that whole time? Maybe I was just being paranoid. My heartbeat at this point had calmed down, but I was still very wary, and decided to turn left towards a supermarket. I had to walk by a couple parking lots, and then I'd be surrounded by people. Only a few seconds after I turned left, I heard them again. The footsteps. I tried to resist looking behind me, but I couldn't. He was walking behind me again, and he had that weird predatory gaze and smile on his face. I was properly freaking out now. Why would he walk past me? But as soon as I turned left, he followed me. I looked around, hoping that I could spot people nearby. I didn't. The only people near me were in cars, and we were walking away from the road. He was picking up his pace again, and I was telling my friends my exact location. They were freaking out, and so was I. The man was basically breathing down my neck now, and I worried that if I started running, he would attack me. Though if he wanted, he could do it anyways. He was so close that I could hear his breathing. Then I heard him sniff me. Actually sniff me. I picked up my pace to almost a running speed when a car drove to the nearest parking lot. Thank God for that car. If it didn't arrive, I don't know what would have happened to me. The man noticed the car too, and immediately slowed down. I decided to walk to the supermarket through the parking lots, so I walked across the grass to safety. I took one last look at the guy, and the look on his face was horrifying. He glared at me. His teeth were almost bared from the scowl that he wore. After that, I didn't look back and walked back to the store. My heart still beating very hard. I leaned against a wall and texted my friends that I was fine. Moments later, I texted my mom to come pick me up from the store. When she arrived, I didn't tell her what happened. To this day, I wonder why I didn't tell her anything. That was probably because I was too embarrassed. Why? I'm not sure myself. The whole car ride back home, I was holding back tears. It was the first time anything like this had happened to me. Even though me and the creepy guy never even exchanged a word, his face is buried in my brain. I wish I had informed the police, because the thing that haunts me more than his stare is that he had done what he intended to do to me to someone else, and succeeded. Still, creepy stalker guy, I hope to never meet you ever again.
When I was in high school, my freshman year, I had a small group of friends. We all ran cross-country together and got pretty close. We would hang out together after school as well. Things started to unravel when one of the guys in the group started asking me out all the time. I had no feelings for him and was constantly turning him down. Then, he started to get really weird. He would write me letters that were basically his fantasies about me, and then the letters I would reciprocate. One time, when the group was all at his house, he told me he wanted to show me something in his room, and me, being a bit naive, went with him. Only when we got in his room did I realize I was alone with him, and that he had shut the door behind us. Nothing happened, but I got a weird feeling and ran out of the room as quickly as I could. Our friendship really deteriorated after that. He would call me, text me, message me constantly, and even show up at my parents' house unannounced. I did my best to cut him out of my life. After he graduated high school, I had blocked him on everything, so communication finally ended. Fast forward about 8 years. On my birthday, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but they left me a voicemail. It was him. He said he got me a present that he wanted to give me. I just needed to call him back. My heart dropped. I don't know how he got my number, because it was different from the one I had in high school. I decided to ignore him and not call him back. He kept calling and leaving me messages for a few weeks. Finally, he left me a voicemail that said, "I'm going to make this really short. If you don't meet up with me, I'm going to end myself." I called the police and reported it so he could be checked up on. The problem was, I had no info on him. I only knew his name and phone number. I didn't know where he lived now or anything else. They said they would look into it. I didn't get any more calls from him. 2 months later, my little sister called me in a panic during broad daylight. My stalker had gone to my parents' house, let himself inside, and gone down to the basement where my room was. She had opened the door to her room and found him standing there. She confronted him, and he quickly left the house, but stayed in the driveway by his car. She woke up my mom, who had recognized him. She confronted him outside while my sister called the police. He told her they told him he could come over and see me. He left before the police got there. They wrote a report, and that was all that happened. The police told us that they couldn't find him, and we really couldn't press charges because the door had been unlocked, and there were no trespassing signs in our yard. I was on edge, and my sister was on edge for months. Finally, the police let us know they found him. Someone else had called the police on him for a different reason, and when the police tried to apprehend him, he stabbed one of the cops with a pick. He's in jail now for less than a year for both charges. We have a restraining order against him as well. I just hope this is the end of it all. I'm terrified if he found out my new number. He can find my new address as well. I would have never expected violence from him, but now I know he is capable of it. Stalker, let's not meet again.
I was always a theater geek. So freshman year of high school, I was in school play, reviving Ophelia. John didn't do theater, but I met him through mutual theater friends. The group of us would hang out while waiting for our rides after rehearsal, and soon John was somehow always there to hang out with us. He always said he had either stayed after for a club meeting or got stuck in detention for skipping class. John was also in some of my classes and would text me or Facebook message me after school, so we got to know each other very well. One day, one of my mutual theater friends, Sarah, and I were talking, and she mentioned how John was basically in love with me. I laughed it off like, yeah, okay, whatever, girl. And she started poking me playfully, saying, he calls you the Bella to his Edward. I'm pretty sure he only gets detention to get to stay after school and see you. This was pretty light teasing, but John was a bit of a troublemaker, the class clown who always got kicked out of class, and I was the goody two-shoes. I liked talking to John, but I didn't want that much attention from him. So, being the immature freshman that I was, I didn't see how to handle the situation any other way than cutting him off completely. I sometimes regret this choice, thinking that if I had talked to him and let him down easy, the next few years wouldn't have been a living nightmare. But honestly, I don't think that would have made a difference. John messaged me relentlessly, asking what had happened, why I wouldn't talk to him anymore. He would still show up to our after rehearsal hangouts, but I started doing homework while waiting for my ride for an excuse not to talk to anyone. John moved his seat to sit behind me in every one of our classes together, When the teacher asked him what he was doing, he would say he forgot his glasses at home and had to sit closer to the board. He would whisper behind me, "Still not going to talk to me, Nikki?" Nikki's a mute now. If I answered a question in class, I got, "Oh, so you can talk?" He'd lean forward and blow on my hair, or whack it with his pencil, anything to try to get a rise out of me. If the teachers noticed, they told him to knock it off. But like I said, John was trouble, and even the teachers got tired of arguing with him after a while. His dramatic, "Who, me?" would never fail to get a laugh out of the class. At the end of all the school shows, the same kid would throw a cast party. His parents gave him the house for the weekend, and his older brother supplied the alcohol. After hours of begging my parents to let me stay over at the party, they finally let me go. Being a freshman, and this my first night of drinking, I went overboard and ended up passing out in a random bedroom. John had been at the party as well, but we mostly stayed to the opposite sides of the house. That is until I woke up with him on top of me. My pants were pulled down, and he was holding my hand, shoving it down his pants. I tried to pull my hand back, but he held it firmly inside his pants. When I tried to shove him off, he whispered, "Be quiet, there are other people asleep in the room. Just relax." I told him if he didn't let go, I was going to scream. And he let go of my hand, and I shoved him off, running out of the room. I found my friend Sarah asleep on the couch downstairs, and laid on the floor in front of the couch. Now wide awake, I started to hear my name tauntingly being whispered as footsteps descended down the stairs. The stairs faced the back of the couch, so as long as he didn't come around, he wouldn't see me. I pulled myself close to the couch and prayed he would just leave. After pausing for a few moments, he eventually did, waiting for my parents to pick me up in the morning, watching him skip around laughing with everyone like nothing had just happened. How notorious. Things got worse from there. He started messaging me relentlessly again, saying we needed to talk. When that didn't work, he started leaving letters in my locker. At first they were very angry, telling me I made him do what he did. He was only reacting to my actions because I ignored him. I was pulling away, and I made him do it. Then they were pleading that they loved me. He was just wanting to talk to me. He couldn't forget about me. I didn't tell my parents about any of this. They were helicopter parents who had just given me a bit of freedom I apparently wanted. And I didn't want to prove them right telling them what had happened. I didn't tell my theater friends either, because they liked John, and they were for the most part my only friends. They just thought John and I had gotten into an argument and weren't talking to each other. John still came to our hangouts. He would always find ways to touch me, sitting next to me, our knees touching. Leaning over me to talk to someone else, his letter started acting like everything was okay. He would refer to conversations I had with the group like they had been conversations between him and I. John was very popular, and I was about to find out he had lots of loyal little followers. People I didn't even know started coming up to me in the hallways asking why I was being a bitch and not talking to John. He'd use other people's phones to call me, and when I picked up, I heard it was him and I would immediately hang up. Sometimes I think he would send out those randos to see if I was telling anyone what had happened. He even got teachers hooked into it. One teacher had pulled me aside after class and told me John had come to her very upset, and she thought it was a good idea if John and I sat down together and talked. I declined, saying I didn't think that would be a good idea. After pestering a couple more times, saying John was really upset, she finally let it go. The letters and rumors started to say that John was going to off himself if I didn't talk to him. If we had any classes together in the following years, the very first day he would make sure to stay after the class to tell the teacher about our problematic relationship, and how he was very hurt by me and couldn't be placed into groups with me. He still sat behind me every chance he got, though. When musical season came around, I did a stage crew, and guess who else joined? You guess it. John. The stage crew was on the weekends, and it was relatively unsupervised. I could tell you many stories about John during stage crew. but honestly, it would be way too long. So I'll tell you one. He got the other stage crew boys to start calling me Tight Pants, as I wore a pair of tight sweatpants to one crew day. The props were in school attic. You needed to go up to the 3rd floor and walk down 2 long hallways to get to it, and the lights were usually off as it was the weekend. Each hallway was a set of locked doors at the end, so I could have to get the keys from the tool closet, walk to the end of the hallway, unlock the door, walk down to another hallway, and unlock the door to the attic. I walked down the first hallway pretty quickly, as dark, empty school hallways are always rather creepy, and was fiddling with the lock, feeling like I was being watched. Right as I unlocked the door, I felt an arm snake around my waist, picking me up, and hand wrapped around my mouth. Started squirming and screaming and nailing at him with an elbow, and was like, "Let go." John was kneeled over, clutching his stomach, and another crew kid was bent over laughing hysterically. They had been hiding behind where the lockers ended, and the door started waiting for me, knowing I would walk down there to get to the attic. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I yelled, trying to rein in tears. The last thing I wanted was John to see me cry. "Oh, come on, Nicky. It was just a joke. We just wanted to scare you," crew guy said, still laughing. "Yeah, Nicky, don't be such a tight pants," John said, laughing now too. I stormed off without another word into the attic, locking the door behind me. I was crying all the while, hearing shouts down the hallway. "It was just a joke, Nicky. We're sorry," followed by more laughter. After that, rumors started circulating that I gave John a BJ at the cast party, that we had sex in the tool closet during the stage crew, etc., etc. Sarah, the theater friend who I didn't talk to much anymore, came up to me at school one day and told me that John was saying some pretty fucked up things with the theater boys. He would relate to them in detail what he did to me, saying things like she had the tightest pussy, and at this point Sarah was so uncomfortable she stopped hanging around them as much and felt the need to tell me now. Now I had rondos coming up to me, not only calling me a bitch, but a whore, and that I had enough. I wrote a letter to John telling him I didn't want to hear my name ever come out of his mouth, and wrote down all the things I heard he was telling people, and that I would report him if he didn't stop. Finally, things had gotten better. No more letters from him. Only an occasional person would call me a bitch in the hallways. It was all good, though, until one day I was walking to my parked car in the pouring rain, and Johnny drives by in the opposite direction. So I wasn't too worried until a minute or so later. I saw him pulling into the plaza as I was walking into it. He rolls down his window and asks if I want to ride to my car, which my car was literally one parking lot away. And I was already sobbing wet, so offering me a drive there was pointless. I said no thanks and kept walking, and he kept driving slowly next to me. When we got to the actual lot, I sprinted to my car and jumped in. I think he's gone, but when I go to reverse, and he has his car right behind me, sandwiching me in. He motions at me to roll down my window, and I do. He yells out his window, "I love seeing you wet," and I flip him off. Laying on my horn to attract attention, he laughs, rolls back up his window, and speeds off. The only other time I heard from him in high school was once when he asked if I had shown someone his letters, and after prom he left me a drunk voicemail saying I was a beautiful woman, and he still loved me. There are more stories, one of which happened while I was babysitting during college, and walked by his house while he was home. But this is already really, really long, and I think you get the point that John made high school hell for me. So John, no, I am not your Bella. Edward was a stalker too, and let's please not ever meet again.
This happened a few years ago at a gaming event in London. I'm very active on Twitch, and a bunch of our online friends were traveling from all over to go to this event. I was a moderator for this channel, and another one of the mods, from the Netherlands, who I was very good friends with at the time, had told me he wasn't going to the event because it was too expensive. Skip forward to the day to the event. I got a message on my phone from this mod saying he is outside the event and he'd like to meet up with us. Turns out he had been planning to come all along, but was just aiming to surprise us with his presence. At this point, it is important to note the group consists of 3 boys, 3 girls, and us 3 girls decided that we were going to leave the event early to go get ready for the after party that evening. As we were trying to leave, he tried to come with us. Even though we kept proclaiming that it was literally just us 3 girls, going back to my place to get changed, and flashy for this party, which in hindsight is very creepy for him to want to come with us. We all arrived at the party, and drinks are flowing, and he keeps actively making too much effort to spend time with me, giving me drinks, interrupting my conversations with other people, and just becoming a general hindrance. I got to the point where I literally was trying to hide from him the whole night. As it approached kick-out time for the party, a whole group of us moved on to a nightclub nearby, where he just stood and watched all us dance, literally still like a statue. It was beyond creepy, and several people at this point had pointed out that his weird behavior towards me. About 3 a.m. in the morning, we all make a move to the train station to head our separate ways home. Me and another girl had to go the same way home, as she lived a few train stops away from me. As I was about to leave, he approached me and said, "I'd like to take you home. I have nowhere to stay tonight, and as I plan to just walk around London taking photos, it wouldn't be no bother to me." Alarm bells start ringing. He traveled all this way, knowing he had no place to stay. A creepy middle-aged guy, who had surprise visited a group of younger people in another country, wants me to take him home. Hell no. I politely decline, and explain I live rather far out of London, and it'd be a long trip for him just to escort me home when I already had a friend for my journey. I dart around saying goodbye and make a swift exit before he can notice I'm gone. It's now 5 a.m. and I'm home, and my window faces the front of my house. I am getting changed, preparing to get in bed, and I go to close my curtains, and there is a strange figure standing outside of my house. It was very dark, and I couldn't make out if I recognized them. But from their structure, I immediately recognized this is a gentleman similar to the structure of that man who traveled across country to spend literally every living moment with me. Whether it was him or not, I will never be sure. But I have never ran downstairs quick enough to make sure that my door was locked than I had at that moment. Safe to say, I didn't sleep that night. The next day, there were talks in the mod chat, and he had mentioned that he went traveling on the underground to visit different areas, but never really confirmed where he went or what he saw. And I guess I will never know if it was him, but if it was, I never want to see him again. I'm a GFE escort. That stands for Girlfriend Experience. A GFE is a booking where the escorts bring more intimacy and a more genuinely easygoing feeling to the appointment. We did not have a lot in common, but I found mental health struggles and politics were something we could bond over. Last June, he booked his first appointment with me. Since then, he has seen me 14 times, in 1-hour increments. He expressed interest in seeing me outside of work, and I had declined. Over the past year, he gradually escalated in terms of offering to help me outside of work. I didn't want the help, as I didn't want to encourage the strings that would be attached to it. He also started writing me letters that he'd give me at the end of each session. He also brought a few odd gifts, but nothing that I would have wanted or asked for. A couple times this was annoying, as I then had to figure out what to do with them. I was already thinking that I might need to end our interactions due to him getting too close, but things really started going poorly when he lost his job in May. In the following weeks, he expressed to me that he thought there was a conspiracy to get him fired, as well as a conspiracy to sabotage his interviews at other companies. I also pointed out that maybe he should stop seeing me until he got another income source. At this point, I was feeling very uncomfortable being the locus of his happiness, especially if it was going to start making the rest of his life worse, which really then amplified the issue. Things came to a head when he brought a damn refrigerator to my work. As you can expect, because of the legality of my work, it's essential to be discreet and inconspicuous. Bringing a fridge to the parking lot area outside my work is the opposite of that. I told him that I wouldn't accept it, and listed off that I had no means of transporting it home or to my mother. His response was that he could drive it to my house, or we could take a road trip to take it to her. This was alarming, as I never done anything to make him think that this was something that would happen, and had specifically made sure to disabuse him of any ideas that as they came up in the past. At this point, I had to decide to ban him because he was clearly out of touch with reality and was imposing his fantasies on me in a dangerous level. Before I emailed him to end things, he also sent me an email offering me his credit card info so that I could buy the fridge online since I wouldn't take it in person. At the end of June, I sent him an email trying to gently break things off, and actually recommended that he speak to his therapist and see if his meds needed to be adjusted, since I know Effexor was caused symptoms of schizophrenia. I also suggested that he delve into how inappropriate and dangerous it was to offer his credit card info to someone he pays to pretend to care about him. I'm not sure if he followed up with you about these things at all. This is when shit hit the fan. He initially just got banned from booking with me, but as he repeatedly called, emailed, and left messages at my agency, and for me, at that point, he started trying to see other providers I work with outside of our agency to avoid our screening and get past the ban. He kept asking if any provider or client relationships ever turned into real ones, and they tried to firmly shut that down. Thankfully, those providers also told me what had happened, and our boss sent him an email telling him to knock it off. Then he got angry and threatening during a back and forth there, and seemed to have convinced himself that my boss was preventing me from responding to him, and that it was all her fault. This was not the case, and she called him out on it, and it seemed like she got through to him. I didn't hear from him at all up until about 2 weeks ago. He showed up under a new name for an appointment with me. I'm not sure if he was waiting for a strategic opportunity, but the only reason I opened the door was because it was raining that night, and he was using his umbrella to block his face. Under any circumstances, I never would have opened to the door. Because of the rain, I stepped out to hold the door while he squeezed inside with his umbrella. So when he lowered it, I saw who he was. I stepped back, and that put me outside the door, with him blocking my way in. He kept saying he wanted to apologize in person, and that he just needed an opportunity, and then asked me not to screw it up for him with the other girls. I just kept telling him he had to leave, over and over and over again, until he finally left. He tried to hug me as I squeezed past him, but I mostly dodged it. He had taken the time to make a new identity and see outside providers so that one would give him a reference that would get him through our screening and wouldn't be flagged with any of his old banning information. This terrifies me. The next time he made a new account with us was around the time we banned him the first time. I thought he'd move on and let things go, but it turned out he literally never stopped obsessing and trying to find a way to get to me. I have felt unsafe taking on any new clients since then. This has had an incredible detrimental impact on my mental health, as well as an impact on my bottom line since I've felt unsafe taking on new clients. After he showed up, he sent me a lengthy email that further demonstrated his detachment from reality and cemented my fears even more. The next step for me may be a restraining order. I worry about how he would respond and escalate. I never thought he would stalk me for months, so clearly I can't trust he won't do something worse. Out of concern for his safety, I tried to end things gently, but at this point, it may need to be reinforced that I want nothing to do with him and never have. I would never and will never want to spend time without being paid, and not even that anymore. I do not like him sexually, and it is my skill at my job that allowed me to find small common ground with him, not any true connection or friendship. I'm trying to get in contact with a psychiatrist, so that maybe he can intervene medicine before I get the law involved. Until then, please, fridge guy, let's not meet again.
In 2003, I was working as a dancer in the Phoenix area. I had been dancing for almost a year and was still getting the hang of how to get the most money from a regular with the most amount of cleanliness reciprocated. I was also working off and on at 4 different clubs, alternating day shifts and night shifts depending on money. One night shift, the skinny, scraggly looking guy comes into the club and hones in on me right away. From the way he's bouncing and twitching in his seat, it's clear even in the strip club lighting he's an addict and higher than my heels. No biggie. I was raised by addicts. As long as he is happy, this could be easy money. We go to the VIP chat. I relieve him of his paycheck, and he goes on his way. The next night, he's back again, and is looking for me. I get his name, Steve. Tell him my name, Tori, my fake backstory, and head back to the VIP again. He tells me he's a truck driver, and is only in town a few days a month. We have a perfectly nice, if not jittery time. No red flags. Everyone goes home happy. Repeat the next night. Then I don't see him for a month. This continues for about 4 months. He starts bringing in the finest gas station addict-approved gifts when he comes in to see me. By this point, he is also serenading me half the time I'm dancing for him. His favorite was Picture by Kid Rock and Sheryl Crow. He sang it despite whatever song was playing. Thankfully, I spent a lot of my time with my back to him and my ass doesn't have ears, so I only could hear snippets of his impassionate baritone. The singing was creepy, not just because it's on repeat. He's now gesturing specific lyrics at me. The longer he sings, the more grabby he's getting. Not anywhere illegal, but grabbing my face to force me to stare back at him, intertwining our fingers to hold hands, pressing my hand to his heart, trying to press his hand to mine. By the end of this month's visit, he asked me to move in with him. He tells me that he just wants to know I'm at his house all the time. Of course, he also envisions himself as the typical customer in shining armor. He's telling me he wants to save me, take me away from all this. I decide to be a little more honest with him and explain I have a girlfriend, not interested in him, and that I am happy living where I am. He tells me he will let me keep my girlfriend. All he needs is to go down on me 2 to 3 days a month he's in town. I shut him down again. He starts begging me to think about it, and he will come help me move in with him when he gets back next month. After this visit, I asked the manager to ban him. Unfortunately, without a picture of him on hand at all times, that pretty much is impossible. I settled for alerting the security, bartender, and manager to give me a warning if he comes in again asking for me. When his time of the month comes around, I switch to a different shift at Club 2, 3, and 4 to avoid him. When I go back to Club 1, the next week, he has left a couple of filled plastic grocery bags for me. They're full of notes scrawled on crumpled, dirty scraps of paper. Silk roses, small stuffed animals, panty roses, mismatched tapes together greeting cards, and other detritus. There's a barely legible letter professing his love, insisting again that I move into his place, and some poorly written graphic details of what he wanted to do to my body. I was sufficiently grossed out and creeped out, and happy I had dodged his monthly visit. The following month rolls around, and I ditch what had become my regular club to avoid him again. I'm working the day shift at Club 2, good money from lots of bored dudes on their lunch breaks. It's getting to the last couple of hours of my shift, and slow. I was on stage, not really paying attention, as I finished up my routine. I didn't see him until I was heading down the stairs to get off stage. He was a few feet in front of me, waving, and started yelling, "Tori!" over and over. There was no way to get around him. As soon as I got to the bottom of the stairs, he grabbed me in a big hug. I was still indecent from being on stage and did not want him touching me. He wouldn't let go and kept grabbing handfuls of my hair and smelling it. I pushed away from him and start to tell him that my shift is over, that my last stage, and I'm heading home. He looks upset and frustrated and says he just wants to hang out with me before he has to leave town tonight. I tell him he will have to pay for me to sit with him, whether I'm dancing or not, and he agrees. I go and give the bartender and security a heads up that he's my creepy stalker guy, then go back to taking his money and attempting to replace him. Instead of having me actually dance for him, he has me just straddle him instantly while he talks. He was unusually shaky and jumpy this time, so I resorted to making him sit on his hands. He proceeds to tell me how he went to multiple clubs looking for me this month, how he asked various clubs if his girlfriend Tori was there. He tells me he has his house all cleaned up and ready for me to move into. I remind him again that I'm not moving in with him, and he excitedly replies, "Well, you never know." I again remind him of my girlfriend, who I was making plans to move to Canada with.
He says he's in love with me and that our whole lives are just about to change now that we've found each other. Between all this jilted conversation, he's singing lines from Picture again and prodding me to sing along with him, like some messed up romantic duet. Finally, despite the money, I decided he's just being way too crazy this time and really creeping me out. I tell him I'm done with my shift and I really need to get home. Before I get off him, he suddenly wraps his arms around my waist, picks me up, and starts running towards the hallway that leads to the exit. I'm still indecent, wrapped around this cracked out, skinny, scraggly, dirty trucker while trying to flag down the bartender, DJ, anyone, because security wasn't there all of a sudden. He made it to the hallway and about 10 feet away from the door when the absolute massive security guard stepped back inside from walking a girl to her car. Steve tries to dart around him, and I'm reaching for the security while Steve tries to pull me away from the security and get to the door. The brick wall of the security guard managed to plant himself in front of us and pull him off of me before Steve can try anything else. He insists he was just joking and that he was trying to tell me goodbye. I bolted out of there and into the dressing room while he was still yelling for me to come say goodbye to him, as security particularly carried his bony butt outside. Thankfully, he was banned this time. I decided to take a vacation with my girlfriend for a couple months after that, just in case he tried to show up in the parking lot of the club to stuff me in his trunk. He continued to call the club looking for me while I was gone. They lied and said I quit working there.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.
Okay.